Okay, I think we're live.
Hey everyone, and welcome to HR and Your PJs. I am Matt Phelan, self-appointed head of global happiness at the Happiness Index, and I've got three amazing guests with me. Noelle, if you want to kick off.
Yeah, hello, I'm Noelle and I'm the finance manager at the Happiness Index.
I'm Rosie, I'm the community manager at the Happiness Index and also question master for today. So if you have any questions, I will make sure that they are answered during the session.
Thank you.
And I'm Gethin, Director of Employee Wellbeing at Benefex. I'm hopefully going to share some of the knowledge I've gained quickly in the last 2 weeks with everybody.
Brilliant. Okay, so I thought, because times are tough at the moment, actually it's really easy at the moment to sort of criticise companies. So what I actually want to talk about is some best practice, some companies that we think are dealing really well with it. Like I saw Audi did a bonus yesterday for their frontline staff because obviously they've been working so hard, and it's easy to criticise companies. Gethin, have you seen any good practice from companies or CEOs that's particularly impressed you that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, so I think there's some really good examples at the moment where employers are realising that employees are dealing with an awful lot of stuff at the moment. So we all have anxiety about the situation. We all have probably people we know that are having to self-isolate. But outside of that, and the wider impact on the economy means also worrying not just about their own mental health, but the mental health of those closest to them. They're worrying about money, they're worrying about job security, and it's an awful lot for people to be dealing with at once. And so those companies that are acknowledging the fact that there's a lot going on in people's lives and we can help them in a number of different ways, I think is really encouraging and one of probably only good things that kind of happen at the moment. I think from the employer space, what I've seen that I really liked was Leon issued a communication to all of their employees and externally recently, and they were really open about talking about their staff. They use a lot of empathy, a lot of consideration for all those things that employees will be thinking about. They told staff they want to stay open, and the vast majority of the meals that they're serving are for essential workers, especially within the NHS. But they've also been really clear with employees that if you don't feel comfortable working for them, then they will help you go through furlough. But they've also said that they don't expect to make any money over the next few months and expect to lose money. But they've been quite open by saying, if we do make any money over the next couple of months, we do turn a profit, we're going to donate that. But I think it really demonstrates how they're putting value on employees' work. They're putting value on how belonging is really important to people at the moment, feeling like they're part of something, part of a bigger mission. Feeling like they can play a part in this crisis, and they can play a positive part in getting meals for those who need it. And I think it's just a really good example of language they've used is really honest, is really empathetic, and comes across as genuinely caring. And there's quite a few examples, but I just thought that one from Leon kind of was a perfect example of how to communicate at these times.
Noelle, I just want to bring you in here because you're the self-professed person who loves numbers.
Yeah.
Often finance people can get a bad rep in times like this because they're looking at the numbers, not necessarily at the people. Obviously, you wouldn't be at the Happiness Index if you didn't care about people. But is there do you have advice about around things like, and Gethin talks about this a lot around like financial literacy? Are there things that companies can do to help people that are worrying about their own personal finances?
Yeah, I think finances for me comes hand in hand with HR, and I don't think you can really separate them. And at the moment, there are so many companies out there who are looking to do stuff for people's personal finance. So I think it's just about helping your employees to know what's out there. So even things like mortgage holidays, a lot of people wouldn't know where to go for that sort of information. But it's important that you're giving your employees help on not just finances in business, but personal finances as well. And I think that's where finance and HR come together so nicely.
So if you take us, like our head of people, you're a bit of an advantage because you and Gemma are also best mates.
Yeah.
But how should HR and finance be? Should the HR director and the finance director, should they be speaking daily? what sort of stuff do you think they should be sharing, and how should they be working in a crisis?
I think they should be working so closely together. And as I say, I don't think HR and finance, especially at a time like this, should be separated. I don't think you should look at finances as numbers only. You have to take personal and people into consideration. So, for example, myself and our HR head of people, we speak constantly throughout the day, and I think it's important to keep each other up to date on what you're looking at, because they're so closely related.
Yeah. And Rosie, I just want to bring you in here. I hadn't told you that I was going to bring you in on this, because you thought you were just going to be the question master.
Yeah.
But so I'm sort of chucking it on you. But obviously, you manage the HR punks community. I've seen a lot of support from people in there, that some people could define themselves as competitors. Some of them are working for companies that could be competitive with each other, but seems to be a lot of support between the HR people. Have you got any advice for HR people that might not have support in their company, and where they could seek that outside? Well, the obvious answer is join HR punks, but outside of that, have you got advice on how people could be looking for advice from other HR professionals?
Yeah, I think the best thing right now is to seek out help from others in your field. And something we spoke about last week on HR and Your PJs was just trying out new things, and be very forgiving if it doesn't work out. It's okay, because we're all kind of everybody's in an uncertain time right now. But just seek out help from others in your field and ask them what they're doing, what best practice tips, things that maybe they've had experience with before. But definitely getting help from others in the field and just trying new things out, trying to see what works and what doesn't. We're all learning right now.
And Gethin, one for you, which I think is more of a complex one. I know you always look at stuff holistically. So key workers is obviously something that HR people speak about a lot. But say you've got someone on your books and their partner is a key worker. So they might be married to a nurse or something, and their partner's having to do more than they would normally. Have you got any advice on how you could support someone through a situation like that? Because they might have to be taking up the slack. There's a lot of people that are working from home, but suddenly they've got children to look after. Have you got any advice on how companies could consider stuff like that? Hey Gethin, are you still there?
Sorry, I think it froze for a second.
Oh, no worries. I was just saying, because the obvious one is if you've got key workers in your team, right? But what happens if someone you're employing's partner is a key worker, and they're obviously having to work longer hours, they're stressed, but your employee might be taking the slack up, doing more, maybe teaching the kids at home. Have you got any advice on how employers could look after people like that? Because it's not like you're employing the key worker, but it is impacting your employee.
Yeah, well, I think it would be remiss of any of us to think that well-being solely relies on the individual. I think our well-being is impacted by work, the people around us, the people we spend our lives with. And so I think when you think about any well-being at work, the family life comes into it. You know, we've purposely blurred the lines between home and work. So we can't expect home not to come into work, because we're expecting work to come into the home, and people have seen that en masse over the last 10 days or so. So I think part of it is, you know, it's almost like people aren't home working now. It's not like all of a sudden a third of the country is starting home working. This has been thrust upon them. It's not a choice. People aren't set up for it. They don't have practice. They're not experienced in it. So I think we kind of all need to give everyone a bit of a break, really, to understand that, you know, I've home worked for about a decade, and it took me quite a few years to really get into a groove to understand how I could manage my day, but also manage my mental health, and how do I keep work and home separate when that's all happening in the same environment. And so I think there's lots of stuff around, you know, extending the tools you have in the workplace to the family. So if you're offering things like mental health support and mindfulness apps, other people can use that. Typically, EAP can be used by family members as well, so extending that support outwards. But I think loads of it is just considering the fact that well-being is affected by lots of other things. And if you've got somebody who is a key worker and they're doing 16 hours a day in a chest hospital, bring that home, and that's going to impact you and your family and everyone who's living in your home.
Yeah, no, no, it's really useful. But have you had examples, Gethin, where there's the senior leadership in companies that you've worked with that don't understand the holistic impact? And have you got ways that you could help people understand that? Because sometimes I speak to HR people, they get your message, they get our message at the happiness index, so they might have a CEO that isn't necessarily supportive of it, but they can't just give up. But they're just not quite landing the message. You must have been in that situation maybe a lot of times on how you land that message. Have you got any advice?
Yeah, I think it's something I wrote about in my book, and something I used to talk about many years ago, was the fact that when you have high employee engagement and a great employee experience at work, people step up when you need them to. And so that's been amazing to watch over the last week or so, to see companies where have done that. And the employee engagement is something that you don't really notice until the going is tough. So that's when you really need your employees to, as we're seeing at the moment, cut down hours, cut down pay. I've seen a couple of people being asked to take pay cuts temporarily just to be able to keep the business running. And you don't get able to do those things unless you have high employee engagement. So when the going is good, the investment you make in this stuff starts to pay off at times that are challenging, like now. And I think we will come out of this situation, and I think lots of people will come out of this situation with a renewed sense of how important well-being is. Because from a business case point of view, the evidence is there. The evidence is vast and compelling. But when you invest in your people, when you invest in engagement and employee well-being, you see that in customer loyalty, employee retention, lower turnover, all this kind of stuff. So I think the biggest challenge I've seen historically has been getting the wider business to understand that if you spend money on these things to do with well-being engagement, how am I going to get that back? And thankfully, we have a huge amount of academic studies to kind of prove that that does actually happen. So the challenge now, I think, is helping the HR people to create the business cases to be able to get the money and investment that they need.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I've really noticed really interesting from all my calls and the people I'm speaking to is how many people, obviously everyone is scared and worried and business is going through tough times, but people are also starting to talk about what like the new way of working could look like, and people are seeing a lot of positives in that. And it's right from a basic level, like people who had never, it's like we had our first board meeting via video conference, and we were joking like we never have to see each other again. It's brilliant. But we've always used technology and stuff like that. But even us, it's pushed us to new levels. I'll start with you, Gethin, then go to you, Rosie. I think with Noelle, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant! This is your picture. So actually, I'm going to go Gethin, then Noelle, then Rosie. But is there a way of working that's been, as you, I think your words, Gethin, thrust upon us, that you have adopted in the last couple of weeks, that when you come out of this, that you might keep yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really interesting is kind of when you look at the disaster recovery and the business continuity of most employers at the moment, I'm actually quite amazed at how ill prepared some organisations have been, people not being able to come to work. I think when you think about the terrorist attacks we've had in this country, the large-scale train strikes, the fact that everything grinds to a halt when there's snow, you know, as a nation, we really should be preparing our organisations to actually carry on business in the event of most or all of our staff not being able to get to work. I've seen that those that are well prepared are weathering the storm a lot more painlessly from a logistics perspective than others. And I take our business, you know, business continuity has been a huge part of our business, a huge bit that we've invested in. And, you know, although it's been tough for a few people to kind of set some wheels in motion, we largely turned 250 people to home working in the space of literally a few hours because we were so well prepared for it. And I think going forward, it'll be quite interesting, you know, SaaS companies like ourselves and yourselves, when we complete those business proposals and you have those business continuity pages, that feels like the stuff that no one really pays much attention to because it's not the cool stuff. And I think going forward, we'll realise the importance of choosing providers who are well prepared so that there isn't a blip in service. And I think, the wide implications we've seen of, everyone's seen the pictures on social media of the water becoming cleaner in Venice, dolphins returning to the harbours in Italy, the pollution dropping significantly in China. If
Yeah.
every company started to allow 20% of their workforce to work remotely going forwards, that'll have a huge impact on the environment.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that yesterday. I was thinking you could end up with a global work from home day, couldn't you, out of this? Like, for example, Wednesday is the work from home day. I mean, I'm just chucking ideas out there, but you think, I mean, religion done some of this before, didn't we? Like Sunday being the day of rest, and it's not about religion, but about having a day when actually everything shuts down, because it's crept up, hasn't it? Sunday's almost become a day like every other day. But now we've got technology. Why can't Wednesdays be work from home day? Where it's possible. Noelle, any ways of working that you're going to keep from this?
Yeah, so I think I've always worked in companies where working from home is quite normal, but maybe only for once a week or whenever is needed, or just whenever you want to. But obviously now it's constant. You're at home all day, every day. And isolation is often a word that is used negatively, and we're being told by the government that we need to isolate, which I think is quite funny, actually. But I think at the happiness index, I haven't felt isolated at all. We're constantly on video calls, which I think is nice, because it's not felt like I've been on my own. Seeing people face to face, seeing inside people's houses, and how their personal life is involved in their work, people's kids running in and out, their partners coming in asking questions. I think taking away from this is that work and personal life can't be separated, and that you always have to take into account someone's personal circumstances into their work life. The two shouldn't be looked at separately. And I just think keeping constant contact with everyone is so important. And if other companies aren't doing it, I think video calls are essential at the moment to making yourself feel like you're not going crazy, just you and your partner or you and your family, and keeping contact with the outside world, because it can feel like you're constantly in the same four walls all the time.
Noelle, do you think there needs to be a redefinition of what professionalism is? Because, I mean, some people's thought of professionalism is someone turns up at work on time in a suit. There's still people who think like that. Whereas, I mean, you're there wearing your dressing gown.
Yeah.
I don't really care what you're wearing, as long as you produce a good set of management accounts and do the roles that we need. Do you think this is going to sort of speed up a redefinition of it? Because there's always been certain industries, like the tech industry, that have been a bit more like you can wear a pair of shorts and all that kind of stuff. But do you think this is going to change other industries?
I think it has to. I think if this has taught us anything, is that we need to incorporate work into our homes. And yeah, like you say, I feel very comfortable sat here in a dressing gown, but that's because I work for a company where they've made me feel like I can be myself 100% and still do my job. I think, like Gethin said, there are so many companies that you see that aren't necessarily having financial trouble or aren't closing their doors, but what they're really struggling with is people actually just working in their home, which to me is crazy. So I think definitely to be a professional doesn't mean that you wear a nice suit. It means that you're able to do your job and be yourself 100% of the time.
Yeah, there was an article in the FT last week about it was like how to maintain professionalism at home, and it was the worst I ever read. It said things like make sure there's never like some like you're washing in the background when you're on a video call and stuff. And I thought,
crazy.
It's coming from such an arrogant view, because so many people now might be in a small flat where the four of them are all sharing the Wi-Fi, where they're all trying to do a video call at the same time. I mean, if you're worrying about that in terms of professionalism at the moment, I think people have got bigger worries than when you have a phone call with someone and they've got a bit of washing in the background.
Exactly, and I think those industries need to take a look at the way that they're approaching things like that, especially in a time like this.
And Rosie, I mean, your role has been one of those challenging changes, and the events industry from the Olympics through has been hit majorly, hasn't it? And if you
Yeah.
take your Rosie's role is always to physically connect communities together, but you've overnight had to start doing that digitally.
Yeah.
Have you got? Is there any part of this connecting people digitally that you will definitely keep?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ever since this has all started, it's become, like Noelle was saying, it's become a lot more normal just to have a regular chat with somebody over video camera. In my bedroom, for example, at first it was hard to adjust to, but now it's become the norm, and I think it'll stick for even after this is all over. And I feel a lot more comfortable just calling somebody up in like the community that maybe I haven't met before. Like last week, I haven't seen 2 of our community members in a few months, but they were more than happy to join us on HR and Your PJs, and they were eager to do the video chats and be connected online. And I think before this all happened, people would be a lot more hesitant to do so. So yeah, running the online community, everyone's been really supportive of each other in the group, and we've all been a lot more willing to step out of our comfort zones and doing these kind of video chats and webinars and everything. So I think after this is all over, I'll definitely be continuing on with this kind of thing, because it's opened a lot more new doors to just kind of connect with people from far away. You can't even, for example, make it to an event in London. Doing these online kind of things just give people more of an opportunity to attend events and join us in the community. So yeah.
So just that everyone is listening, so Rosie's also the question master for today, so if you've got questions, please message them into Rosie now. But we've also got somebody who's listening called 70 Miles from she's HR business partner of the Ariva group. She's got to shoot off in 5 minutes, so I thought I'd get into the real fun stuff, Noelle, with Furlough, which I know there's a lot of people. The reason so everyone's aware, the reason I asked Noelle to come on, one is to connect finance and HR in this time, because I think it's so important. And also I knew that me and Gethin couldn't answer the questions on Furlough, so I thought, let's get someone on who's got into the detail of it. But also, Noelle, what I'd like us to do is just focus on what the government have actually said, because whether it's furlough or whatever, my own mental health has been improved by just ignoring and just going to the source of information. Because I mean, the amount of rumours that go around, isn't it? It's like every 2 seconds there's a rumour in London that we're about to get completely locked into our houses and we're going to get shot by the military if something happens, because the rumours just spread so quickly. So on Furlough, Noelle, could you just tell us exactly what we know from the government, and let's just stick to the facts of what we know, and if you could just share that with everyone that's listening.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I think it's really important at the moment that it's the facts that you're sticking to, because there is so much in the media that isn't confirmed, especially when it comes to these type of things. So yeah, as I'm sure everyone has been watching, Boris has been doing an update daily, and last Friday there were some government measures which were introduced by the Chancellor. One of which was called the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme. It's unprecedented what he has presented in terms of government support for employees, and it's basically a system where they're trying to stop companies from making redundancies and instead furloughing their workers if they have to. So a furlough worker is someone who remains employed by the company but isn't currently working. So obviously a lot of industries, offices, bars, restaurants have had to close their doors, and their employees aren't currently working, and they aren't able to pay their salary. So the government has said that they will cover 80% of an employee's salary of up to £2,500 per month if that person has been designated as a furloughed worker. In order to become a furloughed worker, your employer has to have a conversation with you to let you know that that is what is happening, and then the employee has to agree that. Otherwise, there may be other avenues that they may wish to go down, such as redundancies, but again, that's a case-by-case basis. To be eligible to become a furloughed worker, you have to be on the company's payroll. So it obviously doesn't include freelancers or 0-hour contracts. There is meant to be an update today from the Chancellor on those. So if you have those sorts of people in your companies, that may be one that you want to look out for. But at the moment, there is no such thing like this for those employees. This is currently for a 3-month period, but it's being backdated to the 1st of March. So currently it covers March, April and May. The Chancellor has said that if he thinks there is a need to extend, then that is a possibility. But at the moment, everyone should be working on the assumption that this is a 3-month scheme for employers and employees. So as I said, that's the 1st of March it's backdated to. And one question I wanted to come to, because I've heard this a lot, is can someone volunteer to furlough? The answer is no. It's an employer's decision. Basically it's whether you have no work or you aren't able to work because you've been asked not to work. The whole process is very unclear, I would say. They say that there's going to be an online portal set up where you're able to notify HMRC of your furloughed workers if that's what you're choosing to do. But how this looks and what this looks like is yet to be seen. There's very little detail of how it will look. So they're saying it's to be set up as soon as possible. But as I say, the details of how and it looks is yet to be seen. So those are all the facts that we know at the moment.
Is there? I've had a couple of messages coming on WhatsApp straight in, Noelle. There was a portal. Is the portal live yet?
No, the portal's not live yet. HMRC have said that they're working tirelessly to set it up, as there's not a pre-existing system. So it's not live yet, but it has said that it will be ASAP. There's no date given, but as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think as we said on our call the other day, Boris is not a details person, but
no.
But there's still a lot of good. Another question I've had, it was actually for me, which is furlough a good or a bad thing? I think that's quite a binary question, but for me, I think when the dust is settled in a year's time over furlough, it's going to be the application of how companies apply it. So if you take Wetherspoons, where they basically just, what was it, 40,000 workers? I'd have to fact check that, because when I read they had 40,000 workers, I couldn't believe it was that many, but I will double check that. But they took 40,000 workers and basically just binned them all off and said, go to the government to get your money, versus companies that are furloughing people but making sure that they get paid, and then the company's going to get plan to get the money back from the government. So I don't think it's as simple as saying furlough's good or furlough's bad. I think it's understanding how the companies apply it, because I think there's going to be some really good uses of furlough and some really bad uses of furlough. Have you got any comments on that, Noelle?
Like you said, I think it's different for each individual company, and you need to be thinking about your business needs as well as your people needs. And I think there will be some companies who do use it in a really bad way. I mean, reading the article on Wetherspoons, I thought it was atrocious what I think it was the CEO had said to his employees. So it's there to help the economy and to help businesses. It's not there for people, to think, oh, just let that happen. So yeah, I think there'll be a real mixed bag of good and bad examples of using the furlough scheme.
Gethin, I just want to bring you on this, and I know this is something me and you spoke about a lot, which is the connection between culture and brand, and the way people are treating their employees now, and how that's going to impact the brand. I can't remember what town it was in, but there is a Wetherspoon that's been completely graffitied. Do you think this is going to be a bit like, in obviously in Liverpool, people won't read the Sun because of the way the Sun treated Liverpool fans after Hillsborough. Do you think this will, because a lot of this will just get forgotten quickly, or do you think consumers are going to be impacted by the way companies have treated their employees?
So I think before all this happened, consumer behaviour was changing. So we saw this big merging of consumer brands and employee brands, where basically employers were able to say, the way I treat my employees is so good, you should come and buy from me. And people like John Lewis did that, right? So they completely rebranded John Lewis and Waitrose as partners. That was basically saying the people are at the core of what we do. We treat our people really well, and that's why you should come and buy from us. And in the US, lots of companies have to go and do the same kind of thing, where they're basically saying our people are really important and we want to take care of them. And so that merging of consumer brands means that I think we have a more discerning consumer anyway. So we've already seen that consumers now, especially younger consumers under the age of 40, are much more likely to buy from a brand that treats its employees well or has a positive impact on society. And I don't think we will forget what happened at this time. You know, there are great examples of employers doing really good things like, you know, furlough is there for the companies that really need it. It's not just for everybody to use just because it's money. You know, it's there so that it can help out the companies that really need it, but the companies that can survive and can balance the books and keep people in their work should be doing that. And people like me will not forget the companies that did the right thing, and also I won't forget the companies that did the bad thing. So I will be banging that drum for years to come to make sure that, you know, and I actually think, you know, you see a lot of stuff on social media at the moment where people are basically saying, from this point onwards, when you go for an interview with a company and they say, have you got any questions for us? Should one of your questions be, how did you look after employees when COVID-19 hit the country? And should that start to become a benchmark of, you know, people like me have always said that, you know, you will judge your employer by how they help you on your darkest day. And this is a dark day for a lot. So I think it's time for us to be judging our employers.
Yeah, I was speaking at an event recently with George Sargent from the John Lewis Partnership, and someone actually said, well, what you talk about all this stuff, but John Lewis has had some bad financial results. What does this partnership actually mean on the ground? And she gave a great example recently when, because obviously there's been all the panic buying and everything like that. She was just saying, and they just not had enough staff in store. A call just went out saying, can any office staff come? Can you please go to your local John Lewis and just turn up for work tomorrow? And she just said it was unprecedented numbers. People just literally left their laptops, went into store and helped out. So I think it's a great example of it actually working on the ground. Rosie, have we had any questions come in, or shall I start going into roundup?
No questions yet.
Cool, no worries. So Noelle, I just want you to do a little summary for anyone that's listening on something positive on the future, on what you see happening in the next 12 months, because there's a lot of bad talk at the moment, but from a business perspective, what do you see in your lens over the next 12 months?
So firstly, from sort of a non-finance perspective, I see companies coming out of this and readdressing their ways of working, and that I don't think would necessarily have happened had this not have occurred. I think that's something really positive to take from this.
Yeah.
I think from a finance perspective, obviously everyone at the moment is worried about different personal finances, business finances. And I think it's just important to look at it positively, in that we will come out the other side. The economy will come out the other side at some point, and some form of normality will resume. So I think it's really important to be positive that our economy will return at some point, and we will all be okay.
Yeah, and I think at the Happiness Index we have a bit of a unique insight, because our chair runs a business in China. We also have an operation out there, and I was speaking to the HR director at ARUP, the architects, yesterday, and businesses that have got operations in China are obviously seeing that return to normality there. So yeah. I think it's been good for our own business meetings to see that, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Rosie, what do you see for events in the next events in the community in the next 12 months?
Well, I know for us it's been kind of a challenge trying to figure out which platforms to use and best practice on doing online events, but I think a lot of events managers and groups I'm a part of, they're all really supportive on how to best put all your events online. So I think maybe in the next few months we'll have better connection in different parts of the world of people sharing information and doing events online and staying a lot better connected than we ever have been before.
So we've tested Zoom and GoToWebinar for our events. How would you rate Zoom out of 10?
Zoom, I would say, is a solid 8. I think it's pretty easy to use, and I liked it.
And GoToWebinar?
GoToWebinar it's very advanced. I think a little too advanced for me at this point, but I'd give it probably a 6, mostly because I'm having issues with.
I think there's a
yeah.
lot. There's a lot in that though, isn't there? It's Gareth Dunlop's favourite quote. That what is it? You can't sprinkle on simplicity. You have to haul out complexity. So there's a product there that's got more about it, but you're rating the one that's easier to use higher.
Absolutely. Yep.
Cool.
User friendly is that's what I'm all about.
And Gethin, we're all hoping for a follow up to your book. You must be thinking about some new chapters in there around what's going on at the moment when we get out of this. Have you got any forward thoughts of what might be in that book next year when we're writing about this period?
Do you know, I actually think everything I've written about before is still applicable now. I think, as I mentioned, those people who've been taking wellbeing seriously and invested in it, their culture is weathering the storm a little bit better because they had already taken people's well-being seriously. So they already had things in place that meant if people were worried about their financial situation, they had help. If people's mental health took a drop, that they had place to go for support. You know, those companies that already had that are now just basically saying, okay, it doesn't matter whether the thing you were worrying about was divorce or money, and now it's coronavirus and the things that are around that. We gave you all the support and we signposted you to everything already. And you know, we've already realized now the importance of social connection at work and how important that's been for quite a long time. We've realized that, you know, we still need to get outside and spend some time in nature. And I think anyone listening to this webinar will realize that what we all worried about a month ago has gone out the window, and we've replaced it with something else. And I think, you know, life can spin on for all of us on the turn of a dime. And I think being able to react to that and being able to support employees no matter what happens in their life is really important. And I think fundamentally employers realize now, probably more than they ever have, that, you know, the research shows you that employers are the most trusted institution in the lives of employees right around the world. So in 2019, the Trust Barometer said that 72% of people said the employer was the most trusted institution. They trust their employer more than doctors, the NHS, the government, media, politicians. And in 2020, the Edelman Trust Barometer saw that move up a couple of points. So it's now even the most even higher trust in employer than it was last year. And I think employers now need to realise that to get the best out of their employees and to look after them and to give, you know, to get the productivity and commitment you need from employees, maximising that trust means this is a perfect time that you can really come together and make a difference to your employees' lives.
No, thanks, Gethin. And I'll just sum up on a point, which is we did a study last year that showed that HR professionals were the unhappiness profession in the entire happiness index database. And I don't have an update on that data, but I do worry about HR professionals at the moment because I know they're all putting long hours in. They're on the front line, they're making tough decisions. So my last message is a bit like what Rosie's seen in her HR Punks community, which is just give another HR professional a call. If every HR professional that's out there gave everyone a couple of calls and just checked in, nothing to do work, to see how they're feeling, I'm pretty sure that would be a nice little butterfly effect for everyone. So, but finally, I just want to thank Gethin, Noelle and Rosie for being amazing guests. And if anyone has any questions afterwards, let me know and I'll send them on to the team. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
The end.
Thank you. I can figure out how to turn this off. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.